setting it up to go live now. I'll let you know when it goes through.
Okay.
All right, we're good now. All right, you guys. I know it's been a while since I've posted content in general, as well as do one of these lives. So I'm here with Christine. I've been working with Christine for about 6-7 months at this point. So we've been working together since the beginning of the new year, actually. And she's had some amazing results so far. So I wanted to get her on here to kind of talk about her story a little bit, talk about her journey, and hopefully there's some stuff you guys can take away too as well, especially the ladies out there too, because a lot of guys I work with and normally men, it may not always be relatable to this audience. So just wanted to get her on here to talk about her story, and I think that's more valuable than me talking about it. So Christine, I appreciate you hopping on with me and taking the time out your schedule, outside of our check-in. But why don't you go ahead and tell the people like what you do, what's your background as it pertains to fitness? Because I know this is not your first rodeo when it comes to fitness. I know you've like focused on this stuff before. I guess talk to the folks about your lifestyle, because I think maybe that'll be pretty relatable.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dallas, for having me on here so we can have a conversation and share what we've learned together with other people. So
Yeah.
my background with fitness, I haven't really been in it long if you think about the grand scheme of things. I think I've been working out for 6 years, and not all of those 6 years were lifting. Say the first 2, I was figuring it out. It's scary in the gym, cardio, like little boot camp classes. But it really wasn't until about 4 years ago where I started lifting and realized how much I enjoyed that and the results I was getting from it. Because the body composition that you can see from lifting rather than cardio is just phenomenal.
Okay. Wow. So I thought you had been working out I thought you had been in you just taught me something, because I thought you had been like, with the weightlifting like for so long. So you were saying, oh, you just started taking it serious like a few years ago and it was kind of on and off.
Yeah. On and on. Yeah, I would say that because I was trying to figure out what I enjoyed. So it was the cardio classes, it was the P90X at home, and then I liked lifting, but it wasn't 5 days a week consistently because you kind of go through your ups and downs. So I'd say for the last 2 years, it's been consistent with 5 to 6 days a week.
Right. Right. I know you were working with the trainer before, we talked about that, but I feel like you've gone through like I guess the life cycle of fitness that I've noticed most women go through, like, especially when I was in college, like that's when the lifting stuff started to become a little more popular with women. But before that point, you were a girl and you were new to the gym, you would see all the guys in the weight room section and say, oh, I don't want to look like that, or that's pretty intimidating. Oh, let me just stick with the cardio machines. And then you do that for a while and you don't like the way you look. So you try the classes. That's fun for a while. But, then, people just, and then eventually it comes full circle and people start messing around with weights, and then they do it the right way. They start to see the results and look the way they want to look. So I guess with that said, what was it that caused you to decide to make the change to more like of the weightlifting approach as opposed to the classes and, figuring things out?
I think because I was in those classes with other women, right? And these women were looking like I wanted to. You could see their muscle striations. They had these really muscular, beautiful legs that guys have, but on women as well. And I would just talk to them and be like, "How did you get that? How long have you been doing this?" And they're like, "I don't get it in this class. I get that by lifting." And it started to open up like, okay, it's not scary to build muscle. It's going to look good on you. You have to go to such extremes and like almost be doing stuff that you shouldn't be doing to look like a man. Like we're just not going to look like men, even with muscle. So getting over that initial hump of being scared of I'm going to look this way and knowing like, this is actually the way I want to look. I don't want to be skinny. Like that was a big thing for me when I realized I didn't want to be skinny. I wanted to look fit. I wanted to have muscles. I want to have big, muscular arms and muscular legs. So that was it for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And hearing the fact that you thought that way before is so shocking to hear now, because of like the conversations we have on a weekly basis about your goals now, they're more towards like, hey, how can I build more muscle? How can I improve my metabolism? How can I lean out but still look good and still look shapely? Like all these goals you tell me about. So it's crazy because it's not like you didn't know what to do. It's that you didn't know you wanted what you wanted at the time. It's almost like you had to get over the initial mental block of, hey, lifting weights is not going to make me look like a man, or it's not going to make me look a certain way. Like that's actually what I want. And when you talk to the girls in the class that look the way you wanted to look, they're telling you they didn't get it from that. They're like, yeah, we're doing the class, but really I got my results from doing this over here. So it's a pretty big realization because some people never realize that. And I love what you said about it's not going to happen by accident too, because so many, not even just women, like I'll be on the phone with guys talking about their fitness goals and they're like, yeah, I want to lift weights and get stronger, but I don't want to look like a bodybuilder. It's like, dude, you think you're gonna just like wake up one day and lift a couple weights and look like you gotta go out of your way. You gotta a lot of guys
Right.
steroids, you gotta like really train hard and be really locked in. Like if you want to look like that, you gotta be intentional about it. So most people don't have to worry about, looking like a man, looking like a bodybuilder in that case. So
Yeah.
it's funny. So that's a good insight there. So where would you say you were at like before we started, in terms of your fitness journey? Because I know before we started, you were working with a trainer, you were focused on your fitness. It's not like you were somebody who had never focused on this area of your life before, because we started working together at the beginning of the year. Like you had what, 4 or 5 years under your belt at that point, albeit doing different classes, the cardio, then taking the weights seriously. So I guess when we started working together, where would you say that you were at in terms of your fitness, in terms of your headspace related to all that? Like talk about that.
So fitness wise, like I felt like I had a really good handle on that. I was 5 days a week lifting. I was progressing. Well, no, I wasn't progressing. So I was still going 5 days a week, headspace wise. Before I got with you, I recently had surgery last May, and that kept me out of the gym for a while. When I could go back, it was lifting really light.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually remember with my trainer back then, when I did get back into the gym, I cried with him 3 sessions because I'd made so much progress. I was lifting so much weight. And when I went back, I was lifting hardly anything. And it was, I guess you could say, not embarrassing, but I felt like I let myself down, even though
It's
my
not.
body was healing from surgery.
Mm-hmm.
It was hard to accept that. So I was kind of just going through the motions. I wasn't looking to progress anymore. I was just going through the motions. Whatever happened, happened. Feeling a little bit down on myself. But I'd say nutrition wise, I was not on it last year. I think that's the best gift you've given me, or the best knowledge you've given me is nutrition. We've really hyper focused on that. And I think that's where I made the most of my gains from, was that.
Yeah. And why would you say you weren't on point with the nutrition? Because I don't think it was a knowledge gap issue, because you came in and you were very easy to work with because you had a lot of the skills that I would teach somebody or help somebody with. And the skills that you came in with made my job a lot easier, because all I had to do was like tell you what to do and you did it. Like you already knew how to meal prep. You already knew what foods had carbs in it, what foods were high in protein. Like I didn't have to do a ton of teaching on the nutrition side of things. So why do you feel like maybe you were struggling with the nutrition?
Because it was just me with the nutrition. Yes, I do know what I'm doing, but I guess I've been up and down so much with falling off or having like days where I ate too much, and my other trainers focus more on the training, but you were more on the nutrition, and you brought to light things that I didn't realize. And you also, what's the word? You kind of boosted me up, because I remember our first conversation, you're like, well, why is this not working for you? And I said, well, I've only really stuck to a diet for 2 to 3 months. And you go, oh my gosh, that's low hanging fruit. You're going to be just fine. I'm like, low hanging fruit, that's my biggest problem. And you said, if we can get you to stick to something consistently, that's an easy fix. It's not your metabolism. It's not,
Yeah,
anything inside that's not working. I was like,
that's
oh,
funny.
well, we'll see. You'll be wrong, but we'll see.
You almost like want to prove me wrong, but like don't want to at the same time. Oh, shit, I do remember
Yeah.
that conversation because it kind of just flips everything upside down. Like people will be in a space where they're not being consistent with something, but then they think they're the problem. Yo, it's got to be my age. It's got to be my genetics. It's got to be because oh, I just don't respond well to this or that, or whatever people think it is. My hormones, I'm insulin
Yeah.
resistant. And it's like, no, man, you're just not sticking to it consistently, which is fine, because not only can it be an easy or simple fix, but it's something you actually have control over. Like you don't have control over your genetics or your age or anything like that. So, or your metabolism, stuff like that. So, I mean, I'm glad that we were able to have that realization, and it gets you to buy into it a little more, like, oh, so I have full control over this, puts you in the driver's seat. And I want to touch on something you said a little earlier too. Well, a couple things. Firstly, with the trainer, that's why I love what I do too, because I used to be a trainer in person, and it was like, your trainer is great too. Like he's made a lot of progress with you, but because of the nature of the business and just like the business
Right.
model, you really only have time to focus on the fitness. Because if he's training with you 2 to 3 hours a week, he's doing that with every other client as well. He's not going to have time to talk to you about nutrition. There's just no space for it. Whereas like with this model, it's kind of makes more sense. So that's actually why I got out of that industry. Because I'm like, well, if it's mostly nutrition and some training, like they're both important. But if I'm only focused on the training with you, when is there ever time to talk about the other stuff without you having to go to a
Right.
dietitian or a nutritionist or talk to a bunch of different people for the same goal. So for me, from a leverage perspective, this makes a lot more sense. But so I'm glad we were able to get that figured out, because that was kind of the limiting factor for you. And then the other thing I want to touch on is what you said about how disappointed you were coming out of the surgery. So I almost relate that to a lot of the people I work with, because I work with a lot of former athletes, and I call it reaching your second prime. And a lot of these guys are
Mhm.
so down on themselves because they've played a sport in the past, and then life happens. They go into a real estate job and they're sedentary most of the time, and they haven't worked out in 5, 10 years. Then when they get
Yeah.
in the gym, they're beating themselves, even though it's like progress, they're beating themselves up because it's like, well, damn, I used to bench this much in high school or college. And they're like beating
Yeah.
themselves up because of that reference point. So you almost have to like set a new standard for yourself. And that second prime will look different from the first. So I think that's completely parallel to like what you were talking about coming out of the surgery. Like, damn, I made all this progress and I had to take 5, 6 months off the gym. And now here I am, baby steps. But now you're in a place where you're hitting PRs. So I
Yeah.
guess let's talk about where you are now with your health and your fitness.
Well, I'm hitting PRs and I'm starting to be proud of myself again. And I look back and everyone said, it's going to take about a year. It's going to take about a year. And I mean, I'm roughly right at a year and I'm just now squatting a plate again. It's not where I was, but man, it feels so good to be back going heavy. And now I'm starting to go heavier on not all of my lifts, but a lot of my like big compound lifts
Mhm.
because I can, because me and you adjust it, rep range and all of that for
Mhm.
my capacity now, but it feels really good because I can see not a finish line. I can see myself getting back to that weight quickly because right now I'm in a cut, so I can only go, push as much as my body will let me. But we're getting ready to go in a bulk, and I already know by December I'll be lifting just as much as I was before surgery last year. I
Yeah.
can already see it.
You're on pace. It's like when you can see that it's within reach, it makes you a little more excited and bought in. Whereas like when you were first starting, I remember when we first started, it was like, I'm telling you what I want you to do. I'm like, hey, let's try to push a little more on this. And I remember you telling me like, it's kind of hard to do that right now. I feel like I can't, or just you were kind I think for the weights in the gym, you kind of stayed around the same numbers for a while. And
Yeah.
then eventually you got to a point where I don't know if it was you built your capacity up or you just got used to the workouts again. You were able to push harder, even though you had lost weight at that point. Um,
Mhm.
and I believe I put it in the title of the video. So I think you lost around 25 pounds of fat this year. And what surprised me, and because you were pushing hard in the gym and because you were controlling all the variables, you were eating high protein, you were prepping your food and really on point with that, um, and training hard, like I was just saying, I was surprised when you told me. I mean, I figured, hey, we're making progress in the gym. You've got to be getting stronger. You've got to be putting on muscle. But we actually looked at the InBody scan recently, and you actually put on a few pounds
Yeah.
of muscle while losing 25 pounds of fat. So, I mean, I guess what can you say about what played into those types of results?
What I ate,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say what I ate,
More
and
nutrition.
then
Mm-hmm.
And I think just like you said it, like I never went in there and babied my weight anymore. I
Mm-hmm.
started really pushing, was intentional about it. And I just made sure I did very what is it called? Low steady heart rate or cardio or what's the word I'm looking for?
Steady, yeah, steady state cardio, like this, get on the elliptical for 15, 20 minutes, like that kind of stuff.
Just getting my steps and making sure, I'm not pushing too hard on cardio, but just getting them in. But always increasing weight.
And I think that's important too, because that's just all leverage, because you're somebody who was working out. It's not like we took somebody who was doing absolutely nothing forever and then just put them on something and now they're making all this progress. Like you're kind of past that beginner stage. For you, it's like I'm doing the work. How do I dial it in and make it better? So it's like
Mhm.
just simply by taking the workouts, you were already in the gym a few times a week anyway. So kind of like increasing that, but also thinking about, all right, with the hour that I'm spending in the gym, how can I get the most out of it? Because I always use this example for you. I'm like, because you're focused on the right things, you and this other person could both spend the same amount of time doing the same amount of same workouts in the gym, but you're over the 6 month course of 6 months to a year, you're going to see better progress than them because of what you're focused on. And the same with nutrition, stuff that doesn't take any additional time, but we're able to, because you have the skills and because you're focused on the right things, you're pouring that time into the right things, you're going to see more results. So it's just getting more from your time, the same way you would in your business by focusing on the right things. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's important stuff there. But one thing I definitely wanted to touch on is like you're very good with your routines when you're at home. You're somebody who meal preps
Yeah.
every Sunday. It impresses me how you and Corey do that. And your workouts, you never miss a workout. What about like some bumps in the road? Because I know you've traveled probably once a month at least the past 6 months. You've definitely gone on at least like 5, 6 trips, and we've had to work around stuff. Like, what can you say about those trips? Like how we managed that, or what changed for you? You know, how you were able to make that work? Because that's something a lot of people struggle with. Like a lot of guys I work with, they travel for trips, but then they'll fuck up for a week, and then it's hard for them to get back on track, or they don't know what to eat when they're on the go. Like, how did you adjust to all that?
Oh, I love that you asked that question because that
Yeah.
was something I was thinking about before this. I wanted to touch on because
Yeah.
those were really great things for me.
Mhm.
So for the trips, it was trial and error. My first trip I did, got back, took us like 3 days to get back to the gym, to get to cooking. We were just eating crap. And I was like, I do not like how I feel right now. I
Mhm.
feel, not proud of myself. I feel lethargic. I'm like, okay, we're going to do it different. So I guess my best advice is even when you get back and you don't feel like doing it, don't go in there and push. Don't go in there and make it your best workout ever. Just get to the gym, go through the motions because you doing that muscle memory will get you back on track a lot sooner than taking a week off and resting. You need the muscle memory regardless.
Mhm.
When it comes
Staying in
to
rhythm.
food, yeah, when it comes to the food while I was gone, it was hard not to stress about it, but I just made sure when I ate, I did a bigger portion of protein on my plate and
Mhm.
smaller carbs because you are on vacation. You don't want to cut everything out. You still want to enjoy it. But
Mhm.
if you just are conscious about, your meat needs to be the biggest thing on your plate, then I mean, that's how I got through it. It was just fine.
So not being like you did have a regimen, but it wasn't the same way that you were at home. Because when you're at home, I know you're a very routine based person. Like
Yeah.
having control of the numbers and the macros gives you less anxiety. It gives you feel like you're in control of the situation. So you're weighing everything out at home and you're pretty good there. But on the road, you weren't necessarily doing that, but you developed a different type of routine for that situation. Like, all right, every time I'm out, I'm just gonna eat intuitively, but make sure the protein is the biggest thing on the plate or the vegetable. So that's good stuff there. And I think again that's important for somebody like you because like a lot of the guys I work with, you guys can be very all or nothing. Like you're either dialed in all the way, or you're just fucking. I'm taking a break. I'll get back on track
Yeah.
when I get home. And then, like you said, if you lose your rhythm, it becomes not only maybe you gain a little weight or you lose your momentum. It becomes harder to get back into it because you didn't stay in rhythm. So I'm sure it felt good to do that. And for you, it was about finding that middle ground of like, hey, look, I'm not meal prepping this week because I'm on a trip, but I do have, although you weren't perfect at first, it was a skill you got better at over time. Each trip you
Yeah.
got a bit better and developed your own routines, but it's like, all right, at least I do have some type of routine for when I travel. So now this can't be an excuse anymore. Because so many people use that as a thing. Oh, I got this trip in the summer coming up, so I can't start a fitness routine now, almost as if they don't want it to be a lifestyle. So I would say that was huge for you for sure.
I would say another big thing that I took away from the trips, like you said, just from routine and me doing so many of them, I got the same thing for breakfast everywhere I went, just a protein and a fruit. I'd eat a salad for lunch and then for dinner, because we'd be going out to networking events at barbecue places or Italian places. Then I would allow myself to have a little bit more. But since I set myself up for that earlier in the day, I didn't feel as guilty for it. So that's how I kind of navigated that.
Right, right. And when you eat the same things for breakfast and lunch, you know how many calories it is, it's pretty clean.
Yeah.
So you almost, based off your caloric needs on a daily basis, you almost know how much you have to work with at the
Hmm.
end of the day. So it's like I can eat whatever. It's just a matter of how much. So I mean, you were able to make that work, which is a good rule
Yeah.
to follow, as opposed to every meal being a wild card all the time.
Yeah.
It's easy to
That's
get
too
carried
much.
away. Yeah, and I know you weren't perfect. Like your birthday just passed, and I think you said
Mhm.
West, excuse me, San Diego. You guys were going a little crazy with the food, but it didn't really
Clearwater, we just did.
water.
But
Okay.
yeah.
But it didn't matter because, as you and I both have realized over this process, the longer you're consistent with this and the more things you do right than wrong, the less significant each day becomes. So even
Yes.
when you weren't perfect with your plan, because you had done what you were supposed to do, not only at home but on your other trips, like you've just built up so much progress and momentum and days of winning the day as opposed to not. Even when you do go over, you had a new low on the scale the next week. Like it didn't really
Hmm.
affect you in the grand scheme of things. So I think it was also I think it was also a good thing for you to learn how to mess up in a way, or learn like, oh,
Yeah,
I
it
don't
was.
be really perfect with this. So all good stuff there. Um, what would you say are, I guess, some of your bigger lessons? I know we're kind of talking about that with the traveling, but what were some of your biggest lessons on this journey, and like how was this different than other times you've tried to go the fitness route?
So I was hoping you were going to ask me what's your biggest takeaway. So you did, but with another one. So I have two things that I want to share because I think it's very helpful to anyone.
Mhm.
So okay, so all or nothing. Oh, okay. So one strategy that I'll keep with me forever that I'm so glad that you introduced was the refeed. Like you said, I am very all or nothing. So sometimes I would overeat at the end of the week and it would just make me feel horrible. I'd be like, oh, my week is ruined. But we found a way to work around it for me. And that was, during the week when I'm working, I'm busy, I'm not as hungry, I'm not eating as much. But then on the weekends when I'm home and you're comfy, you want to eat a little more. So
Mhm.
what me and you implemented was I would save some calories from each day during the week. And I'd have a bank of like 800 to 1,000 calories. So come Saturday night or Friday night, if we wanted to go out to dinner, I could eat what I wanted, but not feel guilty about it. So
Mhm.
that was amazing that we figured that one out for me. That one worked really well.
Yeah,
I would
that's
say my biggest, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Yeah, I'm gonna let you finish. I was saying, oh, that was the first one, right? I think you said you had two.
Yeah.
Okay.
My biggest takeaway or my biggest like aha that I'm just never grasp, even though people tell you this all the time, was like you just said, it doesn't matter if you mess up, the longer you're consistent. And it's
Mhm.
so true. Because you're right, I wasn't perfect all the time, but since we had months and months and months of consistency, I just got right back on track. Like, yes, I would gain a little bit of weight, but it would fall right back off because I would jump right back on it. So, like those one off days where I wasn't perfect, I don't feel as guilty about it because it's not going to hinder my progress. And
Mhm.
that is the biggest thing that I took away from all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like anybody. I think you just explained that perfectly because anybody can say that and tell you that, but until you see proof of it actually working, it's hard to believe it. It's like, oh shit, I'm not an anomaly. Like, there's nothing wrong with me. This actually applies to me
Right.
too, you know? But yeah, so sometimes we think like that. Like, nah, that wouldn't work for me. I got to be locked in. I got to be perfect. And
Right.
the other thing I would say is because you understood that, you didn't let it linger. Like this kind of became an issue earlier when you were traveling a lot, like where you travel for 3, 4 days and you get back and it's like the middle of the week. So it's kind of like it's a Wednesday. Am I really gonna meal prep on a Wednesday?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just get back on track Monday. So then you eat like shit the rest of the week. And that's when it's an issue, right? It's not the 3 days
Hmm.
you're away, it's the letting it turn into 7 or 8 days of in a row of like not hitting your targets. Like that's when it gets dangerous. But you didn't do that. Like we always talked about, go hard into and out of trips. Like
Yeah.
just go hard and then get back on track as soon as you get back. Don't let it linger. Don't think about it. Don't hesitate. Because you're going to minimize the damage, so to speak. And just with that concept you just talked about, strictly from a mathematical perspective, like it just makes sense. Like if you're only doing something for a week, like let's say you're on point with your fitness for a week, and that's the extent of your journey. If you mess up on the weekend, that's like 30% of your journey. But if you do this for 52 weeks out the year, and
Right.
then you take an entire week off, that's less, that's about 2%. Even
Hmm.
though it seems like a long time to not be doing something, it's like it just matters less from proportion perspective. And then the first thing when you were talking about the refeeds for you guys watching, what Christine's referring to is like we kind of noticed that she would overeat naturally because she has a sweet tooth. It's just something she's always struggled with. So like one day of the week, her and her husband will want to like eat desserts and eat food that wouldn't be on a typical nutrition plan. And because she was on point the other days, it would feel like she's messing up. And because she thinks like in so all or nothing terms in terms of the fitness stuff, it would feel like, damn, I'm fucking up my plan. So what we did is we noticed that she wasn't so hungry during the week because she was so busy with work and just didn't have as much of an appetite when she's in her normal workflow. We decided to just build that into the strategy because it all works out anyway. It's all numbers at the end of the day. So we would be a little more aggressive with her caloric deficit during the week so that she had more calories on the weekend for what we call a refeed day. And that way she could eat the foods that she wanted, that she was already eating, pretty much doing the same thing anyway. But now it's a part of the plan, so she doesn't feel guilty about it, which only helps with adherence because now she looks forward to it at the end of the week. Like, all right, if I'm just on point Monday through Friday, Saturday I can go crazy within reason and then get back on track tomorrow. Whereas before, if she was doing that, it probably would have caused her to feel like, damn, I messed this whole thing up. Like, now I got to make up for it, or whatever the case is. So I feel like that was a good strategy. And it doesn't work for everyone, but I think for you, it was definitely a good thing.
I'm so sorry. My husband's in the background. I'm not laughing at you.
I know. Corey, what's up? Yeah. But aside from that, what would you say are your biggest piece of advice for someone who was in your shoes, what, 6, 7 months ago?
It's the same thing you hear all the time. Just start, be consistent. If you don't feel like going, do 30 minutes, don't do an hour. If you don't feel like pushing hard, don't. Just go. Because you do something enough, you create a habit and then you miss it when it's not there. So if you don't want to do it, just do a little bit. So start.
Yeah.
Just start.
Yeah. Again, doesn't have to be so black and white. Like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
going 7 days a week or not at all. Like, yeah. So I mean, that was definitely something we had to get into because I think even with you, you started at what, 4 days a week in the gym, and jumped you up to
Something
6.
like that. But yeah, I think I started at 5 and then we jumped to 6 because we wanted to get
Yeah.
a little more aggressive. But you know what? With you, it's really cool. What I've also noticed is I was lifting 5 days a week, and now with you, I'm only lifting 4 days a week, and then I get to do fun stuff for the other 2.
Yeah, because we're checking all the boxes of stuff we need to do during the week. And then you kind of came to me like, hey, look, I mean, I like lifting, like that's my thing, but hey, now I want to do the classes. Now you're literally one of those full circle. You're one of the
I
girls
know.
that you were talking about who get the body they want from the strength training, but they still do the classes for fun, where everyone thinks
Yeah,
it was the other way around, right? Like, yeah, that's you now. So now
I
you
know.
can
It's
tell
so
them the same
cool.
thing. Yeah. That's got to be the biggest piece of advice then. But anything I missed, anything I left out, like any other final words you want to give folks watching if they're still with us?
Yes. Dallas is the trainer that you need in your life, because he will hold you accountable in the nicest way possible, but he will hold your ass accountable, and we all need that. So hit him up.
Yeah. Nah, Corey's in the background. I remember him talking about how I hit you up when he was ghosting me.
Yeah. See, Dallas will contact me to get to my husband. That's a real trainer for sure.
Yeah. Shout out to Corey, man. All right, I
Yeah.
appreciate the kind words, Christine. Thanks for taking the time to hop on with me. And hope you guys enjoyed this. How do I end
Yeah.
this?
Thank you so much for having me.
For sure.